Above the horizon, as the long image lasting over 3 hours came to an end, the vast golden fire curtain gradually dissipated. Below, the black primordial divine tower slowly shrank, and Qingyan Qian let out a sigh of relief. Maintaining such a massive firelight screen for 3 hours had drained even his heavenly supreme late-stage strength, leaving him somewhat exhausted. In the image, the story began with Yuan Cheng's space creation, and it was revealed that a person at the 3 heavens stage had actually broken through the spatial dimension restrictions. The theory that a larger and more solid space would be harder to break through was something no one had heard of before, but it was now confirmed. Yuan Cheng then explained that the extraterritorial evil clan's continuous attacks on lower dimensions were not as previously thought, merely using those dimensions as stepping stones to attack the Great Thousand Worlds from all sides. Instead, the extraterritorial evil clan aimed to merge all the lower dimensions and even the Great Thousand World itself, creating a new, grand world. If they succeeded, there would be no more distinction between lower dimensions, the Great Thousand World, and other worlds. Just one complete world. Whereas before, people only regarded the extraterritorial evil clan as not to be underestimated, now they truly feared them. The idea was so terrifying that it had never crossed anyone's mind. After explaining the grand strategy of the extraterritorial evil clan, the image abruptly ended, leaving out the subsequent plans for the lower dimension alliances. It was obvious that this part had been cut off by the primordial divine clan. After all, what followed would concern the issues of the lower dimension alliances, including future expectations placed on Lindong and Xiaoyan. Did the alien demon emperor sacrifice the strength of half his clan just to take the heavenly mystic dimension from us? Is it for this purpose? Lindong murmured as he watched the fire curtain slowly fade. He had once thought the alien demon emperor wanted to use the dimension embryo to enhance his strength, and then believed the alien demon sought to use the heavenly mystic dimension as a stepping stone to attack the Great Thousand World. That was already a terrifying plan, but compared to this merging of worlds plan, it seemed trivial. According to the theory that the larger the space, the higher the critical point of restriction, once the 3 worlds merge, the new world created would span several hundred billion miles. The domain world is indeed a vast platform, on which anything is possible, including the legendary Great Sovereign Realm. However, Lindong vaguely felt that the extraterritorial evil clan's goal might not just be to merge all the dimensional worlds. Of course, Lindong could not fathom any idea more terrifying than merging all the dimensions, so perhaps it was just his delusion. Everyone, you must have already understood what was described in the image, Qingyan Qian said as he absorbed the massive fire curtain and black tower back into his body. He then casually placed his hands behind his back and looked at the powerful beings around him. Here, I declare once again, my primordial divine clan is not revealing this information to stir up the powers of the Great Thousand World and lower dimensions. We are not trying to provoke the fighting will in everyone's hearts and strike down the extraterritorial evil clan before their plan succeeds. First of all, that is impossible. To fight the extraterritorial evil clan, relying solely on the Great Thousand World would be somewhat difficult, and relying on the lower dimensions alone would be even harder. We can form a grand alliance, uniting the Great Thousand World and all the lower dimensions. Just as Qingyan Qian's words fell, someone in the crowd outside the Great Thousand Arena called out. Everyone thought that Qingyan Qian would use this opportunity to consolidate the major forces and form an alliance. After all, it was a great chance. No matter whether the previous image was meant to incite the powers, its effect had already taken hold. With some external pressure, a supreme alliance uniting the Great Thousand World and lower dimensions could be born. After all, this place gathered nearly half of the top-tier combat forces of the Great Thousand World. However, to everyone's surprise, Qingyan Qian shook his head. Good idea, but not practical, Qingyan Qian said. We are not like the extraterritorial evil clan. Our environment is vastly different. They are naturally united beings. Since our birth in this world, through the cultivation system of spiritual energy passed down through countless generations, to my limited knowledge, we have only truly united once, during the World Destruction War. Even then, that unity was a survival strategy as we approached the brink of annihilation. Heh, everyone need not act so high and mighty. My primordial divine clan is not high and mighty either. Individual interests and collective interests, this is an old topic. The extraterritorial evil clan unites for the collective benefit, while our unity, though it seems for collective good, is in fact the ultimate development of individual interests. Ultimately, it's a difference in thinking. And let me say something everyone may not like to hear. We need to learn this from the extraterritorial evil clan, Xun'er said. If we form an alliance now, at best, it will be a pseudo-alliance. What do you think? Xun'er's words caused the entire venue to fall into silence. Many people began to reflect on what he had said. Indeed, Xun'er was right. Unlike the extraterritorial evil clan, they were unwilling to sincerely let others stand above them. Starting from this mindset, when the extraterritorial evil clan launched their attack on the Great Thousand World, the reason they could form an alliance was that they refused to let the extraterritorial evil clan trample over them. However, from the moment the alliance was formed, someone had already trampled on them, and that someone was stronger than they were. The Three Heavens stage acted under the orders of the Supreme Stage, led by the Earth Supreme, who in turn took orders from the Heavenly Supreme. This was the structure of the alliance. They preferred their own people to trample on them rather than let the extraterritorial evil clan do so. This sense of unwillingness was the root of the Great Thousand World's current problems, a problem that the extraterritorial evil clan did not have. They were indifferent to sacrificing millions of evil demons, as if dumping a basin of water, without any psychological burden. Everything they did was from the perspective of collective interests, and that was what made them terrifying. Lindong stood in the midst of the shattered stones, his expression serious. He finally understood the purpose of the Great Thousand Assembly. It wasn't to form an alliance against the extraterritorial evil clan. Instead, it was to provoke deep reflection between the Great Thousand World and the lower dimension worlds. Everyone had to calm down and think carefully. In a sense, this reflection was far more important than forming a false alliance. Even if they walked away empty-handed from this Great Thousand Assembly, it would still have been worthwhile. This is the core of this Great Thousand Assembly, Xun'er said. After speaking, he looked at the crowd and smiled. Everyone, don't worry too much. This kind of matter is something you can think about over tea and meals. Speaking of which, there's still one important part of the Great Thousand Assembly that hasn't been revealed. As soon as Xun'er's voice fell, those lost in thought turned their gazes toward him. Everyone knew what he was referring to. That, of course, was the largest scale auction in the Great Thousand World. Lindong and the others also looked toward Xun'er in the center of the Great Thousand Arena. The high-spec auction had finally begun. This auction is being jointly hosted by the Primordial Divine Clan and the Myriad Spirit Divine Clan. To be honest, we don't have anything particularly valuable. After scouring the entire Great Thousand World, we only found 4 items that are barely worthy of auction, Xun'er said indifferently. With a flick of his sleeve, he gestured toward the air. At that moment, everyone's gaze was fixed on Xun'er. Dozens of faintly glowing orbs flew out from his sleeve, floating before him. There were 12 orbs in total, and each orb contained fragments of ancient parchment. These fragments looked incredibly old, but each fragment was enough to form a complete parchment. The key question was, what did these parchments depict? When Xun'er's words echoed again, everyone was stunned by the significance of these parchment fragments. The first item is a collection of secret vault maps gathered by the Myriad Spirit Divine Clan from all over the Great Thousand World over the past decade. There are 12 in total. The collection was a bit rushed, so they only managed to gather less than 20, and these 12 are being auctioned. The others are kept because their descendants still exist in the world, Xun'er explained. Then, his next words were the highlight. Oh, by the way, these are all secret vaults left by the Heavenly Supreme. I briefly looked through them, and 8 of them were from those who perished in the Destruction War. Some of you might know their names. Guangheng Heavenly Sovereign, Crimson Sky Emperor, Demon Slayer Heavenly Sovereign, Spirit Puppet Person, Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign. Boom. As soon as Xun'er's words spread, the entire Great Thousand Arena erupted. These were Heavenly Supreme secret vaults. Each Heavenly Supreme secret vault was enough to attract countless powerful beings, and now 12 were appearing at once. As for the names of these Heavenly Supremes, some of the more powerful people naturally recognized them, though this didn't include Lindong and the others, who had only been in the Great Thousand World for 4 or 5 years. Guangheng Heavenly Sovereign was the sect master of a sect called Guangheng Sect before the Ancient Destruction War, Elder Song explained when he noticed Lindong's confusion. To begin with, Guangheng Heavenly Sovereign was just an ordinary man from a remote area, and his talent wasn't anything extraordinary. However, he obtained a certain opportunity, which allowed him to rise rapidly. From a small rural area, he fought his way through to the peak of his empire's dynasty. His growth was astonishing. Before he turned 30, he single-handedly destroyed a top-tier force in his continent, and that sect's leader was a 4th-grade supreme. After that, Guangheng mysteriously vanished from the world, but when he reappeared 10 years later, he had already reached the Earth's supreme stage. Guangheng Heavenly Sovereign roamed the Great Thousand World, engaging with countless powerhouses. His reputation grew louder and louder. When the extraterritorial evil clan attacked the Great Thousand World, about 20 years later, Guangheng Heavenly Sovereign had already founded the Guangheng Sect, a force as powerful as the Luo God clan of the Western Heaven Realm at the time. Of course, the extraterritorial evil clan went to war with the Guangheng Sect. Lindong also felt a bit regretful about the experience of Guangheng Heavenly Sovereign and his eventual fate. He was indeed a respected powerhouse. As for the Crimson Sky Emperor, there isn't much to know. I only know that he was the Lord of Crimson Extremity Hall. The only interesting part is that, during the world-destroying war, before the flames of battle reached Crimson Extremity Hall, the Crimson Sky Emperor charged straight to the front lines. He faced 2 heavenly emperors from the extraterritorial evil clan, and he burned them alive. Afterward, the Crimson Sky Emperor might have been severely injured, and he fell during his return to Crimson Extremity Hall. His place of death remains unknown, and later, Crimson Extremity Hall was destroyed by the extraterritorial evil clan, Elder Song continued. However, if we're talking about terror, the Demon Slayer Heavenly Sovereign is the most terrifying. During the world-destroying war, he killed 9 heavenly emperors with his own hands. He also slew hundreds of Earth sovereigns from the evil clan and thousands of regular emperors. His accomplishments are equivalent to wiping out more than half of the current 4,000 Great Demon Clan, second only to the top 10 super powerhouses during the world-destroying war. Elder Song introduced the famous Heavenly Supreme powerhouses to Lindong, and as he spoke, Lindong could feel the brutality of the world-destroying war. Finally, the Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign. I know very little about him. I only know 2 things. One is that he managed to escape unscathed when surrounded by 5 heavenly emperors. The second is the sacred drum he holds, which is said to be a heavenly artifact, Elder Song said. Heavenly artifact? Lindong was taken aback. From what he knew, in the Great Thousand World, above spiritual artifacts are divine artifacts, and even high-level supreme powerhouses are drawn to high-grade divine artifacts. Top-tier divine artifacts are coveted by 9-grade supreme powerhouses. Above divine artifacts are earth artifacts, things that even Earth sovereign powerhouses are drawn to. The Luo God Sword of the Luo God clan is considered a high-ranking earth artifact. Above earth artifacts are heavenly artifacts. It's said that once a heavenly artifact is summoned, it can control a radius of tens of thousands of miles. Within this range, any attacks made by the wielder can be magnified countless times. Heavenly artifacts are so powerful that even heavenly supreme powerhouses would covet them. And now, Elder Song's words made Lindong start to set his sights on this sacred drum. It is said that this sacred drum can easily condense the battle intent of an entire army. One strike of the drum can directly stir the battle intent of everyone, forming a spirit of battle intent. If used properly in combat, it can even shatter the opponent's battle intent. A sacred drum that can highly condense battle intent? Hearing Elder Song's words, Lindong's heart stirred. If the drum truly has this effect, it would be a divine aid for the armies that Little Yin and Little Mink are currently forming. But Lindong quickly calmed himself. Forget about whether the sacred drum still exists in the so-called sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign's ruins. Just obtaining the relic map would be a problem. Where exactly is this place? The people gathered here are mostly major figures from the Great Thousand World, many of whom are at least at the martial realm, and probably more than 100 of them. Sigh. Lindong sighed helplessly. Although the group had 2 million supreme spiritual liquid, which they had gathered after nearly 2 months of effort in the martial realm, it would probably be impossible to buy even a single relic map here. Hee hee, you don't need to worry, Elder Song laughed when he saw Lindong's helpless expression. This Great Thousand Assembly is unlike ordinary auctions. It's an auction that involves the entire Great Thousand World. Does Elder Song think we have a chance to bid on something here? Lindong asked. Hee hee, you're eyeing that sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign's secret treasure, aren't you? Elder Song looked at Lindong and smiled. Hearing this, Lindong also smiled, as he couldn't hide his thoughts from Elder Song. Elder Song then said, Supreme spiritual liquid is useless here, or rather, no wealth has any value here. After all, the Primordial Divine Clan and the Myriad Spirit Divine Clan are not lacking in supreme spiritual liquid by the billions. Then what can we use to bid? Lindong furrowed his brow and asked. You'll see soon enough, Elder Song said, his gaze returning to the Great Thousand Arena ahead. Lindong also turned his gaze to Xun'er, waiting for his words. Like Lindong, everyone in the surrounding area had their focus on Xun'er. There are 12 complete Heavenly Supreme Relic maps here. As for their credibility, it depends on how much trust you have in the Myriad Spirit Divine Clan. Now, let's begin the auction, Xun'er said, addressing everyone. Some of you may have participated in a Great Thousand Assembly before. The rules of this auction are simple. No killing or stealing. There are only 2 other rules. The first is that each person or sect can only bid on one item. The second rule is that everything here can only be bid for with a certain item. With that, Xun'er raised his right hand towards everyone. The hand was clenched into a fist, but the index finger was raised, and then a surprising statement echoed through the space, carried by a ripple of spatial vibration. A promise. You will use the promised method to bid for the items here. The crowd was immediately stirred. Xun'er's words undoubtedly caught everyone off guard, including Elder Song and the calmest members of the Lower Dimension Alliance. Clearly, they had never heard of such a method for bidding. Many of them were thrown into confusion, as they had prepared tens of millions of supreme spiritual liquid and various high-grade medicinal pills for the auction, but now, these items were useless. Xun'er clan leader, we don't fully understand your promise. Could you elaborate? I'm sure many people have the same question. At this moment, a booming voice echoed through the heavens and earth. It came from a burly man whose muscles were as strong as steel, exuding immense power. His strength was at the peak of the mid-stage Earth Supreme. Upon hearing the burly man's question, many people nodded in agreement. Xun'er's promise was indeed hard to understand. The promise I speak of is for you to agree to do something for my Primordial Divine Clan and Myriad Spirit Divine Clan. Whoever can do something more difficult or strategically significant for us will get these blueprints. Xun'er looked around at everyone and smiled faintly, saying, Of course, the difficulty of this task has a minimum requirement. For each blueprint here, the starting promise is to kill 3 lower Earth sovereigns of the extraterritorial evil clan, or 1 mid-stage Earth sovereign. When Xun'er's words spread, an uproar followed. Undoubtedly, his words shocked everyone, and they were filled with madness. Almost no one expected that the bidding stakes for the Great Thousand Assembly would target the extraterritorial evil clan. Even the lowest target was the level of an Earth sovereign. If this had been any other time, upon hearing this starting bid, everyone would have immediately given up on these heavenly supreme treasures. After all, killing 3 Earth sovereigns was no trivial task. However, the situation now was different. Before the auction began, Xun'er had already exposed the intentions of the extraterritorial evil clan to everyone. In a context where everyone hated the extraterritorial evil clan and longed for a battle to the death, some of the stronger individuals began to consider the starting bid. Interesting. Lindong also muttered, I have to admit, The primordial divine clan's move is quite clever. They've already won over people's hearts. Wow, 12 blueprints for the heavenly supreme treasures. This would require killing over 30 Earth Sovereigns to meet the requirements. Qingyan Qian's words also exceeded Elder Song's expectations. It seemed that the primordial divine clan was even more insane than he had imagined. However, this plan had a flaw. How could they ensure that the person who obtained the blueprint truly had the strength to kill the 3 Earth Sovereigns? And if the person died before completing the task, who would take responsibility? Then I'll take the Crimson Sky Emperor's blueprint. At this moment, a mighty voice suddenly rang out across the heavens and earth. Immediately, countless gazes turned toward the source of the voice. It was the burly man who had asked Qingyan Qian the question earlier. He seems to be the Valley Master of 9 Wilderness Valley, Guzhen Tian. The 9 Wilderness Valley from the eastern sky of the heavenly net? Guzhen Tian entered the mid-stage Earth Supreme several decades ago, and his strength now is probably nearing the late-stage Earth Supreme? Near the late-stage Earth Supreme? No wonder he dares to take on such a promise. Killing 3 lower Earth Sovereigns is equivalent to killing 3 early-stage Earth Sovereigns, which, with his strength, shouldn't be impossible. As the first to take on the promise, Guzhen Tian naturally attracted a lot of attention. However, he still stood with his arms crossed, gazing at the fiery red blueprint floating before Qingyan Qian. If he could obtain the Crimson Sky Emperor's legacy, his strength would increase further. Once he reached the late-stage Earth Supreme, killing 3 lower Earth Sovereigns would be a piece of cake. It seems someone is starting to take an interest in these blueprints. Looking at Guzhen Tian, Qingyan Qian smiled faintly. He then turned to the other strong individuals in the heavens and earth and said, I wonder if anyone else is interested in the Crimson Sky Emperor's blueprint. If not, then let this old man join the fun. Just before Qingyan Qian finished speaking, another hoarse voice rang out. The voice came from a distant green mountain, not far from the Great Thousand Arena. On a massive tree leaf there sat an old man. The old man was thin, and despite sitting on the leaf, it didn't bend at all, as though he weighed nothing. Isn't that the Featherlight Elder? Is that the Featherlight Elder who created the Featherlight Divine Technique? With the Featherlight Divine Technique, even towering mountains seem as light as a feather in his hands, and he can easily deflect enemy attacks. More than a decade ago, the Featherlight Elder escaped from the siege of 4 mid-stage Earth Sovereigns using this technique. Now this has become interesting. The participation of Featherlight Elder undoubtedly made this auction far more interesting. His gaze darkened slightly, and then an immense aura, vast enough to cover the entire heavens and earth, began to spread out. This power was no weaker than that of Valley Master Guzhen Tian. I make you a greater promise. I will offer the heads of 4 lower Earth Sovereigns from the primordial divine clan. Featherlight Elder declared, his interest in the Crimson Sky Emperor's relic evident. This time, I have my eyes set on the Crimson Sky Emperor's relic, and no one is to fight me for it. Featherlight Elder's bid provoked Guzhen Tian, who glanced at him and immediately responded, I'll amend my offer. I will offer 1 mid-stage Earth Sovereign and 2 lower Earth Sovereigns. Hearing their bids, many in the crowd were taken aback. The stakes were not just high, but the heads of Earth Sovereigns from the extraterritorial evil clan were being offered as part of the deal. This was truly an unusual auction. Looks like Valley Master Xun'er is set on the Crimson Sky Emperor's relic. Featherlight Elder chuckled. Alright, I'll make one last offer. If you can top it, I'll let you have the relic. He continued, I will offer 2 mid-stage Earth Sovereigns and 2 lower Earth Sovereigns in exchange for the blueprint. The crowd gasped in shock. 2 mid-stage Earth Sovereigns and 2 lower Earth Sovereigns. With Featherlight Elder's strength, reaching this goal would certainly require risking his life. It seemed like he was willing to go all out. Qingyan Qian, who was also in the crowd, nodded in approval. On the other hand, Guzhen Tian's expression darkened. This relic was a treasure that could push him into the late-stage Earth Supreme. But the price Featherlight Elder demanded was too high. Was he not worried about throwing his life away? I give up. Guzhen Tian sighed helplessly, surrendering the Crimson Sky Emperor's relic. To obtain the blueprint, he would need to promise to kill 3 mid-stage Earth Sovereigns, which he had no confidence in achieving. Looks like the blueprint will belong to the old gentleman. Seeing Guzhen Tian give up, Qingyan Qian smiled. He then flicked his finger, and the Crimson Sky Emperor's relic blueprint transformed into a streak of light, flying toward Featherlight Elder. Meanwhile, Lindong and his companions, watching the blueprint fly toward Featherlight Elder, were stunned. Could it really be that simple? A transaction made in the blink of an eye? On top of the green peak, Featherlight Elder, seated on a massive leaf, calmly watched the approaching blueprint. As it neared within thousands of feet of him, it suddenly burst with dazzling light. Boom! A massive roar reverberated throughout the heavens and earth, as rainbow-colored spiritual energy surged from the blueprint, swirling like a tidal wave. In the sky, it manifested into a colossal true dragon phantom. The terrifying dragon's aura surpassed that of all other dragons in the Great Thousand World. The true dragon was the king of dragons. Roar! The resplendent true dragon phantom coiled in the sky, its immense and overwhelming roar echoing through the heavens and earth. The power it gathered was enough to make even late-stage Earth sovereigns tremble in fear. Then, the phantom dragon directed its terrifying power downward toward Featherlight Elder. The world changed color, and a storm raged. The scene resembled the apocalypse. "This dragon is so powerful," Lindong exclaimed, shocked. This dragon was stronger than the dragons of the heavenly mystic dimension, even surpassing the likes of the six-fingered sacred dragon emperor. In its presence, even powerful dragon clan experts seemed like mere mortals. This sudden turn of events shook Featherlight Elder as well. The nearby experts quickly retreated, confused as to what was happening. Featherlight Elder himself had no idea what was going on, though the one who remained calm was Qingyan Qian, standing in the Great Thousand Arena. "Featherlight Elder, my apologies." Qingyan Qian's voice echoed. Boom! The heavens and earth trembled violently. Featherlight Elder's face changed drastically as he immediately began to summon his strongest defense to resist the oncoming true dragon phantom. Featherlight Divine Technique. The mysterious hand seals shifted rapidly in Featherlight Elder's hands, and a deep voice resonated in his heart. Boom! A burst of milky white light erupted from Featherlight Elder's body, forming a massive pillar of light that soared into the sky. The illusory image of the true dragon descending from the heavens was completely enveloped by this beam, and the immense force behind it started to diminish. By the time the true dragon illusion reached Featherlight Elder, its power had been reduced to less than a third of its original strength. In the end, Featherlight Elder simply swiped his hand, and the true dragon illusion shattered into countless fragments of spiritual energy, scattering through the air. Swish! As the true dragon illusion shattered, a red shadow pierced through the fragments and shot straight for Featherlight Elder's forehead before he could react. It was the brand of the true dragon clan. Hee, Featherlight Elder, please don't take offense. This was merely an experiment conducted by the true dragon clan to ensure you could fulfill your goal. If you were able to defeat the true dragon illusion, it shows that you have the ability to accomplish the task. As for the brand, it will naturally disappear once you fulfill your promise. Qingyan Qian said calmly as he looked at Featherlight Elder. Everyone around them was also watching. It seemed that anyone who obtained the blueprint had to fulfill the associated commitment. There was no way to simply take the blueprint and run. There are still 11 blueprints left. I wonder who else is interested. Qingyan Qian continued as his gaze swept over the remaining 11 Heavenly Supreme Secret Vault blueprints. However, this time, the entire atmosphere grew much quieter. It seemed that many people were not eager to be monitored by the primordial divine clan at all times. After waiting for a few minutes, someone finally spoke up, targeting the remaining 11 blueprints. "I want the blueprint for the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign." A calm voice rang out. It was the voice of a young man. At that moment, all eyes turned toward him, including the gaze of Nan Tianzi, the leader of the Great Thousand Alliance. However, Nan Tianzi's eyes narrowed slightly as he saw who the speaker was.